25 at a time. An actress? Try playing a different role every time the bell rings. How about a scientist? Ever heard of physics? Chemistry? Who do you think teaches that? Teachers today are breaking down obstacles, finding innovative ways to instill old lessons, and taking learning far beyond the four walls of the classroom. It's time to recognize that great things are happening in teaching and put it back on your list. Don't try to convince yourself otherwise. You had it right the first time.
Find out how you can make more at teach.org. Make more. Teach. Brought to you by Teach and the Ad Council.
And welcome back to Tower Talk Business Radio on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College. I'm your host, Donyshia Boston-Hill, along with Ray Schwetz, and our guest today is Howard Miller, an attorney with Bond, Schwetneck & King of Garden City. Now, Howard, can you share with us what is your top 3 tips that you would give an entrepreneur, someone right out of law school that says, you know what, I'm going to start my own law practice, or, you know, someone who's maybe, you know, an associate thinking to jump ship and start his or her own law practice?
Maybe tip number 1 would be transfer to the business school and go to work for a hedge fund. But but no, I would say, you know, find something that you're really passionate about, and just go with that, and don't let people dissuade you from doing what your heart says to do, even though it may be a rocky road to get there, and even though you may have naysayers. I would say that's the most important thing. Do what you really love. Then I would say, as you're going through, is view what your job is as more of a craft than something that you just have to go to. So you always want to improve your craft. You always want to get better at what you do. And then I think also keep in mind that you're only as good as the team around you. So make sure you find the right people, and be open-minded to advice from people who've been there and done that. I think the worst thing we see with kind of a younger generation is kind of like, well, I know everything. I don't need to listen to what you have to say. And I think it's important to always stay humble, be confident, but stay humble.
Yeah, I agree. And I find that I not only am I always hoping for someone that I can help through a situation by mentoring, but also I feel like I learn so much from some of the younger people that I work with.
That's true.
Yeah. You know, keep an open mind to what they have to talk about. And
we're discovering that more and more. I think sometimes from a management perspective, we get stuck in a way of thinking that may not be the best. And you can't just say, well, we've always done it this way, so we're going to keep doing it. And I'm on our firm's associates committee, as it were. And I always talk to the associates that I interview, you know, I want to hear from you. Because we can get, as much as we try to be flexible, sometimes there's just something that's beyond our thought process that we just haven't come across before, and we need that input from the younger generation.
Yeah, these are definitely different times, and with technology moving as fast, I mean, everything is impacted, especially law.
It has, and one of my colleagues in our Albany office has become a guru at marketing through technology, and it's important because that's how people get information. I mean, think years ago there was no such thing as a LinkedIn,
right?
So you didn't know that that's a place where, well, people may find you, people may be looking for a certain type of lawyer or whatever you do, and I think you have to get your name out there, and doing LinkedIn, speaking, writing articles, anything that you could post somewhere on social media is important. And also keep in mind that anything you post on your Facebook page may come back to haunt you too. So people will check you out. If a client or a potential client wants to find out about me and Googles me, they will not only see my LinkedIn page, which is all business, but they may see my Facebook page. And if I have things that are all manner of inappropriate, that may dissuade people from hiring me.
Fun times we live.
Fun times, and I think for college students, you know, they have to be mindful that an employer may very well check their social media pages before they hire them, and they have to remember that they're, you know, what should be on private settings and what you keep public, because that could cost you being hired.
Absolutely. I'm checking social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, before hiring an intern, you know, brand ambassadors, you name it.
Well, I think the worst nightmare would be you hire someone with a with all manner of inappropriate things on their page, and a client says, "Why did you hire this person?"
Right.
Oh, I didn't check. Oh, and we're the ones who were supposed to be giving advice. So.
Yeah, it's hard to be objective too about like what is okay and what's not okay sometimes.
Yeah, well, you have to. There are legal issues with checking Facebook because you don't want to be accused of discriminating against someone because you found a protected characteristic on Facebook. So you have to balance that, and people would be well served to call their lawyers about that in advance of this.
Now, what's the thing that you like most about what you do in either capacity?
I think the collaborative process of working with a client and problem solving. I would say when I was younger, it used to be standing in front of a judge or appellate panel and arguing a case. But now I'm a little bit less argumentative in my old age, and I'm more that process of client comes to you with a problem, and let's say the law creates some obstacles about how they want to achieve their goal. So you want to see if you can come up with a creative solution instead of saying, no, you can't do this, no, you can't do that. It's okay, how can we figure it out? How can we get you to where you want to go, but stay within the law? So I think that's probably my favorite part of the job now.
And then, of course, the other side of the coin, what's kind of the thing that you find a little bit unfavorable about what you do?
I would say other lawyers.
That's fair.
I think law has its negative reputation, and sometimes it's deserved.
It's interesting because as an entrepreneur, when I was in corporate America, I picked up the phone, I called our legal department. I would keep in mind, of course, the hours, because they were in-house attorneys. And when we had to, use local counsel, then it was like, okay, let me watch the hours. And now that's my entire, life. As an entrepreneur, I'm watching the hours. Did I call my attorney because we have this contract and I need her to, go through these, questions with me, and did I go over a half an hour? Is it an hour? What's my bill for the month?
The billable hour.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's a hard balance to strike. When you do, I never want a client not to call me because they're worried about the bill, because it's the proactive thing, the 5-minute conversation here and there before you make a decision that could save you tens of thousands afterwards. But I think, going back to what I was saying before, what I don't like, I think, law is like every other facet of society. I think our society has just become a lot more angry. So people shoot out emails saying things they wouldn't have said maybe 5 years ago, and I guess it's kind of reminds me of the old. There used to be an expression like beer muscles, how that would make you tough, and now it seems like I can sit behind my computer and I can say anything nasty I want and send it out to you, and it's okay because I'm doing it virtually instead of in face-to-face. And I think that's a sad commentary on where we are.
Yeah, I agree. You are listening to Tower Talk Business Radio on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Ray Schwetz, along with Donyshia Boston-Hill, and our guest today is Howard Miller, an attorney with Bond, Schwetneck, and King of Garden City. Now, it's funny, you mentioned kind of the beer muscles thing. And it's funny because I see it in my kids, and I don't know how to really bring it, pull it back a bit. There's like an immediate gratification that's necessary, and a lack of patience.
There is.
And people, I think, they, like you said, they immediately knee-jerk response, and it's out.
Well, it's interesting. I was a school board member that I work with for many years told me something interesting. She was babysitting for her grandchildren, and they had DVR to show, and they were fast-forwarding through the commercials. And we don't think twice about it. I do fast-forward through commercials all the time. But she was wondering if something is getting a little bit lost, that, back in the day we had to sit through a commercial, and everything wasn't at our fingertips. We couldn't get things right away. We had to wait. I've had conversations with my children. When I was young, there was only like 5 stations, and if you missed a show, you missed a show. And they listened in horror, like you're kidding me. So there is something about lack of patience, and and a school superintendent also told me something's being lost in the experience of kids only playing video games with each other. Because it used to be, if you had a pickup game of whatever it is, you'd make up your own rules. You'd have to work out problems. Right. So if there was a controversy, who's going to be up first or whatever, you had to work it out. And maybe the younger kids aren't developing that skill set as much as we could hope. And maybe this kind of on-demand, and don't we all feel the stress from it? Everything being on demand. I read some book, and I forgot which one, where they talked about in the business world now, people wanting to pass things from their zone of responsibility to someone else really quickly by just clicking an email.
Right.
So now there's no time. You miss talking to each other, and laws become like that. Mm-hmm. So clients will email for advice, but doing everything by email, you're actually missing all of the interaction, getting a complete picture of things. So I don't know. That's my that's my little righteous speech for the moment about but I mean, there's also very good aspects of technology, but sometimes I wonder if we're losing a little bit of a human element that we have to try to get back.
Well, I feel like professionally people are geared towards email because there's a certain accountability.
Yes.
And you can always pull it right back up and look at it and see what needs to be done. And I think there's both a positive and a negative impact to that.
Right.
Obviously.
So as an employment lawyer, we like the concept of email because you're documenting something. You're documenting what you discussed with an employee, and you have a record of it. That's good. Where other parts, if you have, let's say you have to have a discussion about an employee amongst managers, that's not really ripe for an email discussion. That requires some more thought. So it goes both ways.
Interesting. So let's jump into rapid fire here.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Oh, no.
Here we go. Howard, who's on your Mount Rushmore of law?
Who is on my Mount Rushmore of law? I would say certainly Lincoln is on my Mount Rushmore of law. There's a professor out of Harvard named Tribe who I like some of his things, but I would say Lincoln first and foremost. I had remember going to a conference where they actually read from a trial transcript when Lincoln was an attorney, which was pretty amazing. And I recently had a brief where I quoted pretty long. It had to do with a teacher who had done some horrible things, and I found this letter that Lincoln wrote to one of his child's teachers about how important the teacher was in the life of the child, and I was able to quote that, and I thought that was like the coolest thing in the world that I quoted a Lincoln thing. Of course, I got some ribbing from my colleagues about this lengthy quote from Lincoln, but it was fascinating. So I'd say that would be my Mount Rushmore.
Cool. And how do you de-stress? You're in deep into labor law and employment law, and after a long day of trial or actually just working with clients and seeing all these high profile or shocking cases.
Well, I think if I could create a perfect way of de-stressing, it would be keeping a Pez dispenser in my desk drawer and filling it with Xanax, but I don't think that would be the great way. But I actually train in martial arts. I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at a terrific school in Great Neck called A-Force. You have a lot of people from all different walks of life, all different backgrounds, all different everythings, and we come together and we do this thing that we all enjoy. And part of that particular art is that you have to learn to kind of breathe and get a sense of yourself and calm down in order to be successful at it. So I find that very interesting and very challenging. And doing it at being a little bit older, it's going against some youngsters, not little youngsters, but I think 25-year-olds are now youngsters. But it is fun, and it's challenging, and we have a great group there.
Now, how can our listeners find you?
How can just Google Howard Miller, attorney, Boston-Hill, and you could check our website at bsk.com.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Howard. I really appreciate you being on the show. We'd like to thank our guest, Howard Miller, an attorney at Boston-Hill and King of Garden City. Thanks for coming on the show today. We'd like to thank you for being with us. My name is Ray Schwetz, along with Donyshia Boston-Hill, your co-host and producers. The creative director of Tower Talk Business Radio is Rudy Breedy. This is an NCC Foundation Business Leaders Council production. Visit ncc.edu/WHPC for more information. Available on iHeartRadio as a podcast on iTunes, Android Podcast, and Spreaker. This has been Tower Talk Business Radio, powered by the Nassau Community College Foundation, on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. We'll talk with you next week.